And we're back with the discussion for Woman in Gold. And if you watched our review, we did not recommend the movie. Felt like it was a bit too dry. Just kind of a dramatization of a fairly unexciting case. A woman suing to get artwork back that was stolen from her by the Nazis. Sounds like it could be an exciting movie. We saw that terrible Monuments Men, which proved that, making war movies about stolen art doesn't work. And it didn't work here. I couldn't get over how I didn't expect there to be as many flashbacks as there were, or to the degree that there were.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, half the movie is told in flashback, and none of it is revelatory information. It's stuff that, like, literally Helen Mirren's character could have said, we escaped by plane. And that would have covered it. And instead, there's this whole scene of them rushing away from the Nazis and sneaking through this pharmacy and getting to the plane, and then someone saying, 2 people aren't getting on this plane, and it not being them. And it's just like, there's no dramatic tension here. We know that they get out. We know that they escape. And if they didn't, if they got detained and somehow escaped again later, we're just stretching this more. It's like, this is a 30-minute documentary.
But the directors knew this. The writers knew this because they deliberately withhold information. Like, you don't know. You know her husband died. You don't know when.
Right.
You don't know where. You don't know how. And they withhold that information until after the flashback that shows them making it to America, because you already know Helen Mirren made it. So There's no tension there. The only tension is she makes mention that she had to abandon all her loved ones. All of her loved ones. So you get the idea that maybe the husband died in the escape or something. And so there's a little bit of tension there, but not much.
No.
And he's not really a character that they focus on, so it doesn't really matter what happens to him, as harsh as that sounds.
Well, and it all adds up to nothing.
Yeah.
It's all a zero-sum thing. Even if he had been separated from her at the last minute, or they killed him off or something like that. I want, again, it's one of those things that, like, one line from her would have been as powerful. They could have done the scene of her explaining that had happened as part of the courtroom thing, and it could have been really powerful. I just felt like all the flashback stuff was... And the way that they wove it into the movie, it was never her telling a story. It was always her having a memory. So she'd walk into a room, and then it would turn into, this memory of what happened there and what this place was like. The other thing, too, was, like, from other media, from other movies, from other things I've seen and read, like Schindler's List does a great job of making you understand what a horrible thing happened to the Jews under the Nazis. This movie, it's like this poor, extremely wealthy family gets their stuff stolen, and her dad dies.
Yeah. I mean, the harshest thing you see the Nazis and the people do in this movie, and this is, because, we've seen documentaries, we've seen footage, we know how horrible the Nazis were. That's how this movie bases its tension, because the worst thing you see happen in this movie is blatant racism.
Right.
Like, that's it. You don't see the really, really horrible stuff that the Nazis did.
I wouldn't expect from this movie. Like, and that's why the flashbacks are so broken. That's why they're such a mistake. Because the flashbacks are there to try and show you the tension, to try and show you what was lost, to try and show you basically they're there in place of her recollection, her, talking about things in the present. And so it just falls completely flat because you go back to that time and you're expecting terrible things to happen to her family. You're expecting, tortures and murder and all this kind of stuff. And none of that stuff happens in the flashback. So it's this weird dynamic of there's her and Ryan Reynolds having sometimes funny, sometimes dramatic banter.
Which feels weird.
Then there's the legal stuff, which is all just sort of like, well, 50-50, this is going to go one way or the other. And it always goes against them until it doesn't. So there's really no twist there. And then there's the flashback stuff. And again, it's like, this is a story that if you just strip it down to them working through the legal process of it, it's a 30-minute documentary, and it's mildly interesting.
Yeah.
Instead, you have a movie that's 90 minutes long and is mildly interesting.
Yeah.
It's not less interesting for being longer. It's just not any better or more interesting for being longer.
Yeah. And, it's hard to tell what part of the movie that they really wanted to focus on. Because...
Absolutely.
Is this a movie that takes place in the present that have flashbacks, or is it a movie that takes place in the past that has flash forwards? Because it's almost even about screen time.
Well, and they have... they have the Ryan Reynolds and Helen Mirren sequences. They have her as a girl sequences in the past. Mm-hmm. And then they have her as a young woman sequences in the past. So it almost feels like, if you have like 4 units working on this movie, you could have knocked it out in like a month. Like, they could have filmed the whole thing in a month simultaneously and edited it together. Whereas if they had made a 90-minute movie with Helen Mirren, it would have taken, 2 or 3 months to do the photography on it.
Yeah, and I found the most interesting character, the reporter. And then
That's
instead
Daniel
of...
Bruhl.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I had no idea who the actor was. But he did an amazing job, and his character was quite interesting. You never really get a feel for him until the very end, when instead of giving him a flashback, he wraps up his entire backstory in a sentence.
Yeah, and that's another thing where, like, if this had been an investigative journalism story, and there had been, like, shadowy government figures trying to stop them, and some of that kind of stuff, like...
That would have been great.
That would have been a much better movie, I think part of the problem was, honestly, that they got Helen Mirren, and they wanted to focus on her more than they really needed to.
Yeah.
And putting her in the lead, putting Ryan Reynolds in her scenes with her, because I think they wanted to split the focus. I think they wanted to tell the historic version of the story and the present version of the story. But they put this super famous, generational actress in there that, like, you assume that the movie is about her. You assume the movie is going to center on her.
They give her no material.
No, they don't.
They
give her contacts and they just say, be Helen Mirren. And that's all she does.
Like, in one scene, they...
Not that they give anybody else anything.
Tell her no. They tell her no. And she gets completely defeated and I just want to give up and everything like that. Previous to that, she had a scene where a guy came up to her and basically told her that not everything has to do with the Holocaust and just horrible stuff, like right there. And that made her more defiant. It was so up and down with her character.
Yeah, that's true. She changes her mind for what seems like no reason. They try to play it off like she's tired or she doesn't want to deal with it anymore, kind of stuff. That kind of stuff happens. Katie Holmes' character has the same problem. Like, she can't handle it, and then she's totally fine with everything, and
while also having a baby.
Yeah, totally fine. You know, goes from freaking out to being completely supportive, and we see nothing in between. It's just in one scene.
Oh yeah, because it was like 9 months later.
Right.
2 years later, so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah.
It was just a total mess. I don't know what happened, but it's like the trailer made it seem like it was going to be really good. And like you said, that was a very condensed version of the movie. And condensed, I think it would have been pretty decent.
I think the trailer is the movie. And the trailer is very, very quiet about how much of the past part it shows.
Yeah.
But it also shows Ryan Reynolds' final speech.
It does. There's also a speech she gives where she talks about, in the trailer at least, that when they look at the painting, they see Austria and stuff.
And I see my aunt.
I see my aunt. Doesn't happen in the movie. Doesn't that line, which I thought was the best part of the trailer, does not happen in the movie.
Yeah, it does.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, it totally does. It's early. It's when they go to the convention, and people are allowed to talk about restitution. And she's like the guest speaker.
Yeah, but I don't remember her saying that.
Yep, she did. She did. It just took forever for her to get to it, but yeah, she did say it. Anyway. Whatever. There's better movies to see.
Way better.
And yeah, I wanted this to be more like Philomena, honestly. I mean, it seemed like they kind of took some notes from that movie, and at least the trailer kind of leaned in that direction. If you haven't seen that yet, that one's out on home video. Check that one out instead. It's very, very good. But anyway, that's our discussion for Woman in Gold. If you like the way we do these, please like the video, subscribe, share it with your friends, and check out all the written and video reviews at dalemaxfield.com. Thanks for watching.